the title. Okay. I hope you're seeing the title page. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Great. All right. Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Natsumi. I am a postdoc here at UCLA in the Cubic group. And today I will try to explain how birds might be using quantum mechanics to travel. If you're a freshman here at UCLA or new to the quantum biology field, welcome. Thank you for coming. And I promise that there will be no equations today. I promise. Because the goal here is not to scare you, but to learn together. And now, if you're an expert in this field, also welcome and thanks for coming. But I just have to warn you that you might find a lot of simplifications today. And that's because of the time and also because I come from the physics background. So this would be pretty much physicists' takeaway on this field. Now, if you notice them, I will ask that you kindly and nicely comment in the chat section so that we can talk later. Okay, that being said, introduce who I am. I was born and raised in a very countryside of Japan called Nagano. Some of you might recall this from Winter Olympic that we hosted in 1998. There is nothing but pretty much mountains there because it's so countryside, but we have some castles too. Then I moved to Tokyo to do my undergraduate study at Keio University. During my senior thesis, I worked on quantum diamond sensors. Then I moved to Houston in Texas to do my PhD at Rice University. And there I did my PhD for using material called carbon nanotubes. Now I'm here in LA as a postdoc and as a Shumi Science Fellow. But let me go back to my hometown, Nagano, because that's where today's story starts. I still remember when I was really small as a kid, my father used to take me to the lake every winter where it was full of these beautiful, beautiful swans. I really love them watching, and I really wish that they're there all the time because in screen, participants are asking to enable transcription. Yes, that's important. Let's enable it. Okay. So swans are there in winter, but I soon realized that they're gone in spring. Turned out that they spend summer in, some Zoom technical issue. Here we go. They spend summer in Siberia, and when Siberia gets too cold, they travel south to my hometown. Even as a kid, I was really amazed that they can travel around 3,000 miles. And as an adult, now I know that this is called migration, which is the seasonal movement of animals from one region to another. And turned out that swans are not the only animals that migrate. There are so many other animals that migrate. Here are some examples: whales, fish, other birds, insects, butterflies, they all travel. And according to researchers, they all seem to know where they're going. There are even some species who return to the same spot every single year. And when I learned this, I was so mind blown. Nature is really amazing. But how do they do this? How come they know where they're going? And I just want to take a moment to do a mini quiz here. Do you think they're using Google Map like I do? Or do you think they have a magnetic compass? Or maybe they can smell? Or they use landmarks? Or maybe they're smart enough to use the sun? Now, My initial plan was to use the Zoom poll to do this mini quiz, but it turned out that you have to be the original one to original host to do this, and I'm not. So let's use the chat function. Could you all do me a favor and post your guess about which option they're using to navigate the cells during the migration? Yes, I see the answer is coming up. Yeah, thank you so much. This is great. I love this active participation. Not Google Maps, yeah. I love that. Okay, I will wait for 20 more seconds. All right, yeah. Okay, thank you everyone who posted their answers in the chat. Now, you might either hate or love the answer. Please don't hate me, but the answer is that all of these are pretty much correct because, you know, Google Maps, maybe not Google Maps, but I use Google Maps. And some birds use magnetic compass. Some insects can actually smell. And some insects and use the landmarks. And turn out the butterflies use the sun. And this is also truly amazing and mind-blowing. But today, we don't have time to cover everything. So let's focus on magnetic compass. So in order for the magnetic compass to work, we need to be able to detect the Earth's magnetic field. But the problem is, Earth's magnetic field is very, very small. It's known to be around 0.00005 Tesla. And don't worry, it doesn't mean anything to you because it doesn't mean anything to me. So to make sense, let's compare this to fridge magnets, for example. Fridge magnets are not the strongest magnet that we have, but compared to Earth's magnetic field, it turned out the Earth's magnetic field is around 100 times smaller than the fridge magnets. And when the quantity is small, it makes it harder to detect. Here's a stupid example. Let's say you really like barbecue. No matter how much you love barbecue, can you smell it from 5 to 10 miles away, for example? Probably not, right? But as I will show you today, quantum mechanics will give you power to detect small quantities. And this is actually the biggest take-home message of today. If you remember one thing from today, please remember this. We need quantum mechanics to detect weak magnetic fields. In order to understand this, I divided my lecture into 3 parts. The first part would be biology, where I talk about how some birds use magnetic field to travel. In the second part, I will introduce quantum mechanical concepts that we need to understand. The third part, which is a leading hypothesis to explain how birds' magnetic compasses work. So that being said, let me introduce our main character today, this cute little bird called European robins. They are also migratory species, and they travel between Northern Europe and Mediterranean coasts. They usually travel in spring and in the fall. In the spring, they go north and spend summer there. And before winter starts, they go travel down to the south. 2 researchers here, who are also a couple, Dr. Roswatas Wilson, okay, somebody told me how to pronounce this name, but I really can't, and I'm very sorry about this. But these two amazing researchers had the idea that robins might be using magnetic field to travel. In other words, robin might have a magnetic compass in themselves. To prove their theory, they did the following. They captured robins either in spring or in the fall when robins are so excited to travel, when robin's instinct is telling them to go travel, right? Then they put them in a chamber called Emlen funnel. This chamber has a wire screen. Let me have a laser pointer here. This chamber has a wire screen on top so the robins cannot escape, and it has an ink pad on the bottom. So what happens is when this robin tries to escape or try to fly or try to go somewhere, this poor robin will bump into the wall of this chamber, and that will leave a footprint. And by looking at this footprint, we can guess which direction this robin was trying to go to. Okay. Now let's look at the figures they get. So you can think of this circle as like a top view of this chamber. And each triangle here represents the footprint. In other words, this triangle represents the direction this robin was trying to go to. Now I want to take a moment and do another mini quiz here. So I have two situations here, figure A and figure B, and one of which will indicate the situation where the robins, most of the robins were trying to go to the same direction. We call it directional preference, as if they knew where they're going, or as if they were guided by something. And one of which will indicate a situation where this something is gone and they didn't know where they needed to go, or they kind of go randomly crazy. Now, which of these figure, A or B, do you think is the situation where they knew where they're going? They had a directional preference, or they were guided by something. Okay, can you do me a favor and put them in a chat? And it's okay to be wrong, just for your information, because we are all learning together. Okay, yes, thank you so much for actively participating. Maybe I'll just take 10 more seconds before I move on. All right, wow, you all are so smart. If I was freshman, I wouldn't have probably able to understand this, but you are so smart. This is great. And all of you are correct. So in this case, A is the situation where they were just trying to go to the same direction, guided by something. And then in B, this something seems to be lost. And as a reminder, their guess about this something was magnetic field. So let's apply magnetic field to this chamber. Okay, in the first experiment, they just used Earth's magnetic field. In other words, there were no artificial magnetic field. And this Earth's magnetic field was in this direction, in this figure, or on this screen. And there is quite a bit of distribution here, but we can all roughly agree that many of them are trying to go to up-ish direction, like top right direction, as indicated by this black arrow here. So good, so far so good. It seems like is the direction with the Earth's direction, right? Now what they did was applied artificial magnetic field. And this time they applied to the opposite direction of the direction of Earth's magnetic field. And let's see what happens. What happened was, okay, now there's a distribution again, but we can all roughly agree that most of them are going like down-ish, down left-ish direction, yeah? Like at least there's like only one guy here. So these two experiments strongly suggest that robins are sensitive. Robins are guided by magnetic fields. And a little bit of side note here is that they also found that robins don't really care about whether it's North Pole or South Pole. They only care about the angle of the magnetic field. So for example, in this imaginary situation, they're not particularly trying to go north or to the south. They're just trying to go to whichever the pole that is closest. Okay. They also found that the light, exposure to the light, and the color of the light is an essential part of this robin's compass. Here, in this experiment, they kept the Earth's magnetic field, no artificial field, but now exposed this chamber to different colors of light. To freshmen, just for information, this is often how researchers do experiments. When we have more than two parameters, in this case, magnetic field and light, we often fix one parameter while changing the other. Okay. Now, what they found as a result was very interesting. It seems like Robin's magnetic compass worked just okay, just fine for like blue or UV light or light blue, or even for green. You can see that triangles are concentrated in one direction, which means they have directional preference. However, when they use yellow light or red light, it seemed like they lost their compass and they're kind of going crazy. So what's going on here? But in order to explain how this works, we unfortunately need to understand some quantum mechanics, which leads me to the second part. But before moving on, let's quickly recap. So in this part, we learned that robins seem to have magnetic compass. In other words, robins are sensitive to magnetic fields. And we also learned that in order for that to work, we need blue light. Yes? Now let's do some physics. Before diving into a weird world of quantum mechanics, let me start from a relevant classical concept first, Ampere's law. Electromagnetics will tell you that the electric field and the magnetic field are like two sides of the coin. If there is an electric field, there's always a magnetic field. Let's look at one example. If you grab a copper wire and you put the current through, then there will be always magnetic field generated. And in this case, it's gonna be radial and it's gonna look like this. And if you change the direction of the current, the direction of the magnetic field will be flipped as well. Now let's bend this wire to form a coil. Then you put the current through those coils again. Then it will also generate a magnetic field, but this time it's gonna look like this. You notice the outside, it's gonna look like pretty much like Earth's magnetic field, but in the middle, there will be like straight looking component. And there's a pretty handy way to know which direction the field should be pointing to, which is called right-hand rule, or at least I call it. What you do is you kind of wrap your finger around the coil in the direction the current is going through, and then your thumb would be pointing towards this straight-looking component in the middle. And this is very handy because now we can test how it looks like when we switch the direction of the current. Then it should be the opposite way, right? And just for your information, we can use this for this left-hand side scenario too. But in this case, our fingers would be magnetic field and our thumb would be the current direction. And if you know more of this, or the credit of this beautiful image goes to this YouTube video, and the link is here. Now let's talk about electrons and their spins. I will first explain where the names spin, spin up, and spin down are coming from. But please keep in mind that it's not really accurate, and I will explain why later. As a reminder, an atom consists of 3 types of elements: protons with positive charges, neutron, and electrons with negative charge. And then proton and neutron will form nucleus, and while electrons are orbiting around. Now, spin is not about this orbiting, it's not, but rather it's about the electron, or where the name is coming from is about electron spinning itself like this. Now, because electron has a negative charge, and a negative charge would generate electric field, we can use the right-hand rule to see where the magnetic field will be generated. And it's going to look like this. And according to the right-hand rule, it will be pointing up, which is where the name spin up is coming from, right? And because of this generative field, we can think of it as the spin has a magnet inside. Physics work, magnet dipole. Electron can spin in the opposite direction too. And in this case, this middle part would be pointing down, which is why it's called spin down. Now, as I said, this is just how historically names are coming from, and it's not really correct. Quantum mechanics will tell you that electrons are not really spinning, but it's rather the electrons' behavior will make sense if we think of them as having magnetic dipoles inside. And if you want to know more about this, I will kindly guide you to this amazing video, which literally says electrons do not spin. But for now, let's just remember that electrons have magnetic dipoles with it, and they have quantum property called spins, and it has 2 states: spin up and spin down. Electrons, or any kind of quantum objects, have this ability to be more than 2 states at the same time, which we call superposition. For electrons, it's spin up and down. So if you grab any electrons, they're usually in a superposition of up and down, meaning that they're both up and down, not up or down. To explain what I mean, let me use some analogy that this book used. Let's think about color blue and yellow. And blue is like representing spin up, and yellow is representing spin down. If you mix these 2 colors, blue and yellow, it will become green, right? And when it's green, it's not really blue or yellow anymore, right? So this is like one example of trying to explain superposition. Or let's use another analogy. So we have coins, and coins have 2 sides. If you toss a coin in the air, which I won't do because I'm so bad at it, but if you toss coin in the air, and if you do it so that it's gonna be like spinning super quickly, you don't really know which side this coin is up, right? While it's in the air, while it's spinning, until it falls onto the ground and we measure it. This is exactly the same with electrons. As long as we are not paying attention, as long as we are looking away, not making measurements, they are in a superposition of up and down. But at the moment we measure it, it will collapse into either up or down, just like this coil fall back to the ground. Okay, let's come back to this atomic model. Using beryllium, it has an atomic number of 4, which means there will be 4 protons, 4 neutrons, and 4 electrons. Some people might remember from high school chemistry, the electron has shells, and the closest one is called K shell, and the next one is L. And K can host 2 electrons, and L can host up to 8 electrons. Now, in each shell, there are orbitals. K shell has only one orbital called 1s. L shell has 4 orbitals called 2s and 3 2p's. But we don't need 2p today because there are only 4 electrons. Each orbital can host 2 electrons each. And notice that I put them at the same height, representing the energy today. So we can interpret this as having set these 2 electrons are having same energy. Another important thing to remember is that an electron hate to be alone. They always want to be paired up with another electron. So they always really like it when they're paired up together, like this. Now, Pauli's exclusion principle tells you that if you have 2 electrons that are paired up, they have to have opposite spins. In other words, they cannot have the spin in the same direction as long as they're in the same level. Okay? But if they are at different energy, then because of the different environment or because they are exposed to another magnet or a magnetic field, then they can have the same direction. So like this or like this. And let's remember some terminologies here. When they have opposite spin, we call them singlet state. And when they have the same spin, we call them triplet state. Okay, we're almost at the end of the quantum section. We were looking into electrons in this beryllium, but now let's just focus on this pair of electrons, A and B in 2s. Let me summarize the quantum properties we learned about these 2 electrons that are paired up. First of all, we know that they can be both spin up and down, which was called superpositions. And second, we learned that they have to be opposite to each other according to Pauli's exclusion principle, as long as they're at the they're at the same level energy. Now, let me introduce you the final quantum concept today, entanglement. This means that the state of A is determined by B and vice versa. There are many other ways to say this. You can think of it as A and B are always correlated, A and B are inseparable, or what happens to A has an instantaneous effect on B. In addition to this, here's what entanglement gets really weird. The entanglement, which is a correlation of A and B, persists no matter how far they are. And this was really weird to me because, for example, A and B, if they're really close to each other, it makes sense to me that they have some correlations because there might be some forces between them. But it was crazy to me that this correlation will persist no matter how far they are, but this is what entanglement is. And because of this, now we can do something what Einstein called as spooky action at a distance. And please be ready because I'm going to soon do another mini quiz. Okay, let's take A and B that were on the same energy level. and then separate them as far as possible. Let's say we put A on Earth and put B on the moon, because why not? And now the quantum mechanics tells you that no matter how far they are, they're still entangled, and what does this mean? So just as a summary, we know that they are superposition. So, okay, let me use my pen. Let's say this is spin up direction, and this is also spin up direction. And now I know that they have to be opposite to each other. So because they're in superposition, we don't really know whether these two are pointing up. But because of the Pauli's exclusion principle, we know that they have to be opposite in direction, right? What I mean by this is that I don't know where they look like, whether they look like this, or like this, or like this, or like this, but I know for sure that these directions would be opposite to each other. Yes? So now let's come back to this experiment. As I said, we don't really know which direction they are pointing at until we measure it. So let's measure it. We do this measurement on A, and if it turns out that it's spin up. Now here's the mini quiz. What do you think? Which direction do you think the B would be pointing at if A turns out to be up? And please do me a favor and put them in the chat. And I see that there are some comments about quantum concepts that I'm introducing today, but yes, I know, I'm sorry. I simplified a lot so that this would be approachable to many audience, but we can talk more about details later. Thank you for your comments. And thank you everyone for putting your answer in the chat. And yes, you're so smart. It's correct. Because it's entangled, spin will be down. And the great thing about this entanglement is that you don't have to go all the way to the moon to measure this. Because of entanglement, if A is up, we know the B is down without even measuring it. And the same goes for another situation. If it turns out that A is down, then we know B must be up. But just for your information, if you want to go all the way to the moon and measure it, do so by all means, and you will find the B will be opposite direction to A instantaneously. And this is why many quantum information researchers are excited, so that we can use this for some future technologies. Okay, let's take a breath because the worst part is over, I hope. So, and in this part, we learned about electrons, their spins, up and down, in superpositions, Pauli's exclusion principle, and entanglement. And why do we need to learn all these weird quantum things in the first place? Because we wanted to understand how Robin uses their magnetic compass. And now we have all these ingredients to understand one of the leading hypotheses called radical pair mechanism. Let's imagine an imaginary atom which has 7 electrons in the most outer shell. In other words, this has 1 unpaired electron here. And just a reminder, electrons don't want to be alone. They always want to be paired up with another electron. So they can form a stable molecule by sharing a pair of electrons. This is the shared part. But if something happens, like energy getting applied, this energy can be like light or heat, then this sharing will break apart. Now each of them has missing electron indicated by this white circle here, and we call them free radicals. And we call them as free radicals, whether it's missing electron or there's additional electron. But in this case, both of them are missing electrons. Now, let's use our quantum knowledge and look at the spin state. So here, spin state, the quantum mechanics will tell you that when they are at the same energy level and paired up, they're always entangled and almost always singlet. Let's see what happens when they're far apart after this bond breaking apart. Turn out that they're still entangled and they can be singlet. Now, let's imagine this right atom are now in a different environment, such as exposed to magnetic fields. Now, because the right spin is at the different energy scale, it can flip if it wants to. So this is now called as triplet, right? So to summarize, it can be singlet or triplet. And here's the first important part about radical pair mechanism. These two states, we think of the state of paired electron, not each electron, but paired electron. They will form a superposition of singlet and triplet state. Okay. And if superposition of singlet and triplet is too tricky to understand, one simple, maybe not too accurate way to think of it is like there will be a mixing of singlet and triplet. Or if I simplify so much, you can think of it as this is left spin and the right hand side spin will be like going crazy. And there will be like mixing or oscillation between singlet and triplet. But quantum mechanically speaking, we say they are in a superposition of and triplet. Now, this superposition, ideally speaking, will last forever, but in reality, they don't. When we measure it, or when this reaction finishes, whether the ending state is singlet or triplet will make a chemical difference. So what I mean by this is this. If it ends on a singlet state, it will generate some chemical products that are unique to singlet state. On the other hand, if it ends on a triplet state, it will generate chemical products unique to triplet state. And triplet chemical products and singlet chemical products are different. Now, here's the final and second important key of the radical pair mechanism. Whether this will end on singlet or triplet is heavily influenced by, or in other words, sensitive to magnetic fields. Here it is, magnetic field. So now the question is, can this mechanism explain how robins travel? In order to do that, there has to be some molecules in robins that has free radicals and that also satisfies two requirements that we learned from the first part, which is one, sensitive to magnetic field, and two, it has some relationship with blue light. And to tell you the answer, researchers found a protein called Cryptochrome in the eyes of robins, and their characteristics sounded amazing. First, in this protein, there was a pigment called flavine that absorbed blue light. So the second requirement checks out. Furthermore, they found that the flavine and an amino acid called tryptophan can form a radical pairs upon light absorption. And as we just learned, if there are radical pairs, if entangled, they will be sensitive to magnetic field. So the first requirement also checks out. And let me explain how we think is happening in Cryptochrome using radical pair mechanism. So as I said, we have flavine, which is FAD here, and tryptophan, which I write as TRP in Cryptochrome. There are some differences here from my imaginary scenario. First of all, they are not forming a molecule here. They are separated, but physically very close to each other, around 2 nanometer. Also, they're not radicals yet because all the electrons in them are paired up. I'm showing only one pair here, but there are so many others and all of them are paired up. One more thing, tryptophan are known to be electron donors. And what this means is that they really like to give away electron to others. And for today, I'm sorry, but you kind of have to accept that it is do that. Okay, now when these two are exposed to blue light, reaction gets activated and tryptophan donates 1 electron to flavine. Now, both of them are free radicals. Flavine is free radical because it has 1 additional electron, and tryptophan is also free radical because it is missing an electron. And once you accept this chemical reaction, the rest is the same drill. Let's look at the spin state of paired up tryptophan electron. They are entangled, and we know that they are singlet. So what happens when they are donated and goes to flavine? They are still entangled, singlet, but now they are in different environment because it's not with tryptophan anymore. It is with flavine, therefore different magnetic fields. That allows spin to flip, which will result in triplet state. And what we learned from radical pair mechanism is that this will form a superposition between singlet and triplet, and that will result in different chemical products, unique to singlet, unique to triplet. So inverse, one more very important thing. And now this singlet triplet balance is determined by magnetic field. So we think what's happening is that, magnetic field affects whether we have singlet more or triplet more. And because of that, we have more chemical singlet products or triplet products. Now, different chemical products would generate different signals to bird's brain, telling them that there was a magnetic field or not. For example. Okay. So yes, we saw the robins are sensitive to magnetic fields, and radical pair mechanism are sensitive to magnetic fields, and it looks like it makes sense in Cryptochrome. So let's see, as a last step, let's see if Cryptochrome's proteins are actually sensitive to magnetic field or not. So this is some experimental simulation result. And what's going on in this figure is the following. On the horizontal axis, we have time goes on if we go to the right. And on the vertical axis is about how much singlet state you have in the system. And we have 3 different situations here. The top one, we did not apply any magnetic field, it's 0. In the middle, we applied a magnetic field that is equivalent to the strength of the Earth's magnetic field. And on the bottom, we changed the direction of the magnetic field. And please ignore all these complicated looking features going on. Only thing I want you to realize is that it seems like there's clearly some shape or amplitude differences between without magnetic field and with magnetic field. Furthermore, it looks like the direction of the magnetic field will matter because the result here in the middle and result here at the bottom looks pretty much different, if you agree, right? So this was a simulation. Now let's see if proteins are actually sensitive to magnetic field. So in this experiment, researchers collected only proteins, put them in a test tube, and applied magnetic field. And what this figure shows is that the horizontal axis is the strength of the magnetic field, and the vertical is about how much change you can induce by applying magnetic field. So if there's no sensitivity to magnetic field at all, you expect the data that looks like 0 all the way. However, this protein showed the increase in effect by increasing the strength of the magnetic field, meaning that yes, cryptochromes, this protein, is sensitive to magnetic field. And this is it. This is all we know so far, which is that, okay, birds are sensitive to magnetic field, and cryptochrome protein is also sensitive to magnetic fields that can be found in the eyes of the birds, and radical pair mechanisms able to explain how this magnetic compass work. However, as I said, this is just one of the hypotheses, and we don't know everything about it just yet. But that is exactly why we are here. By we, I mean the cubic group. I believe that our group can make 2 important contributions to this field of research. The first one is to fill up the length scale gap. So far, as we saw in the first chapter, first section, so much has been done on a bird level. And as we saw in the third part, so much has been done on a molecular level as well. But not so much has been done on the intermediate part, which is a lot because there's a really big difference between molecular and bird, right? So our team is trying to address this gap by conducting in vivo measurements using, oh my God, what is this? Okay, it's gone. Using in vivo measurements using cells, for example. The second contribution is to bring quantum mechanics or quantum measurement technologies to biology. I didn't have time to talk about this today, but photophysics of cryptochrome is known to be very similar to photophysics of quantum diamond sensors. So what we can do is to bring the techniques, measurement techniques that have been developed in sensing community to protein so that we can further study about spin dynamics or maybe control the spin state so that we can do fun quantum physics in proteins. Okay, I am almost at the end of my talk, but let me conclude by introducing 2 exciting implications that this hypothesis has. But let me warn you that it is pretty much very open question. First, if everything I said today are true, because cryptochromes are located in the eyes of robins, maybe, just maybe, robins are able to see the magnetic fields. And maybe this is not too crazy, thinking that some species can see UV light or some can see infrared light. Second, cryptochromes are pretty much everywhere, not in just robins. They are found in animals, insects, even microbes. And magnetic compasses using cryptochrome have been demonstrated in birds, butterflies, flies, and cockroaches, and even some plants. The fact that this mechanism is shared by so many widely distributed species might suggest that it has been inherited from a common ancestor. But in order to find a common ancestor for birds, insects, and plants, we might have to go back millions of years in time to find that ancestor, right? Does that mean the quantum compasses are that ancient? Does that mean nature has been using quantum mechanics all these years, way before humans discovered it? We don't know yet. And we have so many questions unanswered and so many possibilities left to explore, which I think is what makes science so exciting. With that, I am officially done talking. I would like to quickly thank all the members, amazing members in our Qubit team, and I want to thank you for your kind attention. And if you have questions or comments, I'm happy to discuss. You are welcome to email me here, or I am on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. And finally, if you want to know more about this topic, here are some references that I recommend, and I'm gonna soon put the link in the chat. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. And I think, what time is it? Yeah, we have like 7 minutes left. So if you have some burning question, we can talk about that. Okay, I will stop sharing my screen.
Natsumi, thank you for a wonderful talk. And I guess I can read a bunch of questions from the chat that we weren't able to address, or which we left for you to address. Was there too hard? So, wait, I'm losing that. There was one good question which you partially addressed, I think, from Roderick, which said, what provides ability to sense magnetic field direction? This description doesn't account for direction, only amplitude. So how do they tell the direction?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, let me try to remember this. I'm just so hyped by it.
Or if you want it, I can also give my answer.
So, okay, I remember it was about, oh, okay, thank you for Abasalt for putting the link. Yes, you're right. What I talked about today didn't really say anything about direction at all. And thank you for that question. Let me try to remember this. Okay, I think the answer is that, we have spins as we talked about, right? And then there will be magnetic field affecting it for it to flip. And it turned out that the direction between your spin and the direction to where the applied magnetic field is coming from matters. So that at least answers why the spin is sensitive to the direction of magnetic field. Now, when it comes to why birds are also sensitive to magnetic fields of the Earth, the direction of the magnetic field, there are some hypotheses, which is something we don't know yet. But one of the hypotheses is that in biology, it's known that some molecules have preferred orientation. So for example, if we have two molecules that look like this, like that's not circle, that's kind of long, maybe they're not super randomly oriented each other, but rather have some preferred direction. So that explains, if they are oriented in the same direction, their spins will be oriented in the same direction. So now it explains directional preference. But now I welcome Andre to comment on it because I know he knows more. Oh wait, no, they're frozen. Okay, next question. You want to pick something else, Alessandro, or is it about time to conclude?
So a bunch of people have been asking about recordings. There's a link we posted a couple of times in the chat of our YouTube channel, and we will be uploading these recordings to the YouTube channel, so you can check that out. And somebody was asking about temperature at some point, if you know something about the temperature dependence on this effect.
Okay, great question. The short answer is I don't know yet. But I know that most experiments so far has been conducted on room temperature or a little bit higher than room temperature, like our body temperature, right? Because that's what we are trying to explain. However, if you go down in temperature, usually quantum physics speaking, their property gets preserved more, but I personally don't know any studies yet. Some people can comment on it if you want, but okay. Next question. Or we should conclude now, yeah?
Yeah, one interesting question from Sukesh, if I pronounce it that right, is, are there any opportunities for undergrads like me?
Yes, of course. If you are an undergraduate student at UCLA, please do feel to reach out to us and we can all work together on some fun content projects. And even if you're not UCLA students, also do reach out nonetheless, because there might be other like summer internship opportunities that we can explore together. And I'm pretty sure Caris is happy to discuss. Okay. All right, so we are.
Are there any internships available?
Huh? Sorry?
Are there any internships available?
I don't know about the details yet, but I'm pretty sure Caris is happy to discuss that with you. So I will recommend that you will reach out to me at this email address or Caris at this email address. Oh, Alessandro, final thing. Did we post about like Brain Learn and stuff? Like discussion there and stuff?
I don't think so, unless someone did.
In the canvas, you mean?
No, like some template that Caris prepared for us. Okay, here it is. I found it. So here are some links for you guys. Tell your friends about this lecture, and you can also register to the calendar. And even if you're not UCLA student, you can join discussion on platform called Brain Learn using this link.
Yeah, and we will try to address all the questions that you have over there. If we miss something in the chat or whatever, we will try to.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun.
It there. Yeah.
Yes, so let the questions come. Okay,
Yes.
with that, it's time. So I think I would like to conclude my talk today. Next lecture will be next Friday, this time. And which chapter is it? It's gonna be
chapter 4.
4. So if you're taking this as a freshman at UCLA, please try to read chapter 4 before next Friday. Okay. How to log in with a user ID? Let us address that question later. Yeah, we will. If you don't mind emailing me about that question, we will address that later. Yeah. Okay. With that, I would like to conclude. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today, and I hope you have great rest of your day. Thank you.